Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of UCPN Special. And this is special indeed because very much different than what we normally do. I'm being joined by my man James Peterson from Comic Crusaders, or as I like to call him, Dr. J. This is our first video interview, if you will. And we're talking with a legend in the industry here. All right, there's a person I've looked up to myself because
Same.
based on his background, this is wow. It is a wow factor. I mean, he broke barriers in DC, which we'll get into. I'm talking about none other than Mr. Joseph P. Illidge.
Hey there, good to see y'all today, and thanks for having us for this interview. It's great.
No, thanks for
Definitely.
coming on, taking the time out of your busy schedule, because I know you have a lot going on. There's some new endeavors out there and whatnot that we really want to get into. But
All
before,
right, all right.
but before we, hit all about now, let's take it to the
Let's start in
past
the
real quick.
beginning.
Yeah,
All
man.
right, all
You know,
right.
all right. Let's go back to when you first started in comics, or rather, what led to your love of comics. So the question is,
Wow.
I want it to be like this: who handed you your first comic, or was it something you picked up yourself that you said, "I need to be a part of this"? Who did you
Right.
fall in love with first?
Okay, so me and comics, our relationship goes back to when I was in the second grade. So my mom worked at a beauty supply store here in Brooklyn, actually close to where I live now. And so every Friday after work, we would go to the newsstand. My mom would buy soap opera magazines and she would buy me comic books. So it was a regular ritual, right?
All right.
And I was very much a DC head. So my mom was buying me the Legion of Superheroes,
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
All-Star Comics with the Justice Society, Action Comics with Superman, Batman, those characters. And
Question
then
there: did
yeah.
she know what she was buying you, or she was just picking? Oh, this cover looks cool. You like this, or did she
Well, I
know what
was
she was
I
picking?
was with her,
Oh, you were
so
with
so
her.
she basically, let me pick the ones
Oh,
I wanted.
free
We had a
reign.
budget, so she wouldn't let me go crazy, or I would have bought the whole newsstand, right? But basically, I would get like, 4 comics a week,
Nice. That's
right?
awesome.
And but it wasn't until I visited the Bahamas. I have family on the island of Nassau, and when I was a kid, I would go there every summer for like a month or two. And my aunt bought me a bunch of comics, and one of them was Uncanny X-Men 112. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry
Mm.
Austin, Glynis Wine. I remember on the cover it said Magneto Triumphant, and it had Magneto, and he was forcing Wolverine to like put his claws towards his eyes, and
Mm.
he was throwing Colossus, and Storm was fighting him. And that was the beginning of me converting from a DC kid to a Marvel kid.
Mm.
Okay.
And then when I was in the fifth grade, I knew this guy, and he decided he was going to be an Avengers fan. So in 1 month, he bought like 20 different Avengers comics,
Oh,
and he
wow.
designated himself like the Avengers expert of the school. And then I said, okay, I'm going to be an X-Men fan.
Okay.
And then I just really dived into X-Men. So at that time, you're talking Uncanny X-Men 129,
Yeah.
Save Us from the Knights of Hellfire. And we
Wow.
started leading into the Dark Phoenix saga, which
Classic
basically
material.
is what a bunch of people are going to be watching very soon on the screen, right?
Oh,
With
yeah.
Sophie Turner and, my man Michael Fassbender. Not that we're friends and all, but that's my dude. Like Michael
that,
Fassbender
that,
as Magneto, like is
yeah.
my dude. So
No
yeah,
other
for
Magneto.
me, yeah, exactly. So it was like ever since I was a kid. Um, I remember I went to the High School of Art and Design, and I remember getting a tour of Marvel Comics, the offices,
Oh, you
and
got to go to Marvel because I
yeah,
remember not too long ago I asked if they still did that, and they were like, no.
yeah, that's a
Crap.
shame. But yeah, they did tours, and I was in the 11th grade at the time, and they had some original pages from Bill Sienkiewicz for Elektra Assassin sitting around the office, which were just amazing to behold, right?
Mm.
Just
And
sitting there.
yeah, you know what I mean. And but when I got out of college, my first job was at an art supply store, and after I left there, I read about a company called Milestone Comics,
Where
this
about
new
right there?
comic book company run by men of color, starting a whole new superhero universe of characters of color. And at first, I wrote it off because as an internship, And my mom's from Jamaica, so me telling her, "Hey, I'm gonna work at this company and make no
No,
money."
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
that was not the proposition that I was interested in going for. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
I went to a newsstand on the corner of Utica Avenue and Church Avenue, and I saw Icon #2,
Okay.
which on the cover was Icon and Rocket fighting a bunch of SWAT cops.
Yeah.
And the line on the cover, which I think Dwayne McDuffie wrote all those taglines, and he did a riff on Dr. Seuss. It said, "Stop, do not hop on cop." Right? And that comic book really spoke to me. And
Okay.
that's when I decided that I wanted to be a part of what Milestone was doing because I recognized that they were going to be making history. And I felt like, well, I can either be on this side of history or I can be on that side of history. So I called up, I went for the internship. I was interviewed by Dwayne McDuffie
The
and
man himself interviewed you.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And Matt Wayne. Dwayne didn't hardly do any of the talking. And Dwayne was tall, massive. So here's this massive guy in the corner, and he's just sitting there watching me. And Matt was asking me all these questions.
He's just reading you.
Yeah, years later, I would find out that I had totally blown the interview to hell, and what
Wow.
happened. Yeah, I did get in the internship, but I thought I did good. Like
Yeah.
decades later, I'd find out, no, like they weren't gonna bring me on for the internship because they felt like I had a chip on my shoulder. And they were absolutely right. And what happened is a friend of mine was interning there, Jason Scott Jones, who's a television producer, artist, and he vouched for me. He said, "No, like this guy's cool."
He's straight
So
up.
yeah, yeah. So I interned there for 3 months, learned a lot, learned about the business. But back in the day, you know, the Metro card did not give you an automatic transfer
Oh
from
no,
the
it didn't.
train to bus. So I was paying like 4 fares and I was only getting money for 2 fares. So I was literally losing money every day I was interning at Milestone, but I considered the education worth it. But after
Absolutely.
but after 3 months, I was like, okay, we got to get real here. I need to be making some money. So one morning I went to the bosses and I said, "Listen, I really appreciate everything that you've taught me here. I love this place, but I have to go get a job." And so I went to lunch and I came back from lunch and they offered me a part-time job.
No
Wow.
way. Nice.
Yeah.
That was the best
Yeah.
lunch you ever had then when you came back,
Seriously,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And that
Ju-
was the beginning of my career in comics.
Yeah, I was at the I had the privilege of being at the Writers Digest conference when you were on the panel
Oh yeah.
and like doing the whole sort of breakdown about the beginning of your career. I wonder if you could reproduce some of that for our listeners because I think it's first you said like listen, if you want to get rich, don't go into comics.
That's a
But
fact.
but
Comic
one
book
of the
industry is
it's,
not
you're
for
not gonna get rich, right? But
financial wealth.
it's not for financial wealth, but you talked about how that time you spent at Milestone, you kind of showed for you that, yes, you knew you needed to get a job, but you also somehow you came to the realization that you would do this for free, right? At
Yeah.
least a certain period. Like talk about how that inspires you to kind of launch your career from that point. Because I mean, that Milestone history is really powerful and important. And obviously you were in the room with some of the people that we now consider to be some of the greatest creators in the comic book space. But
Right.
talk about what was going on with you to decide like, this is, I'm going to make a career out of this.
Okay, so the first thing is I never knew of a business that was owned entirely by Black people. So Milestone was my first exposure to that. Now the company had 5 founders: Dwayne McDuffie, Michael Davis, Dennis Cowan, Derek Dingle, and Christopher Priest was actually the 5th one. Now Priest left before books started coming out. So the company had 5 founders, but when I got there, there were 4.
Okay.
And being in, their presence and seeing them actually conduct business on a day-to-day basis, learning that comic books was a business and not just seeing it from the perspective of a fan and a consumer, talking about the social issues of the day, seeing these things get created, artists coming in with new pages, writers coming in and talking about their scripts, and just learning every day. I mean, Dwayne McDuffie, God rest his soul, was a genius.
Yes,
And he
was.
could talk to you about anything from music to science to philosophy. So I'm an only child. So, these gentlemen to me really serve these very particular roles in kind of like my psychological and emotional makeup. Derek Dingle was kind of like a father, and Dwayne McDuffie was like a big brother in that sense.
Okay.
So being amidst that, I saw that this was actually a feasible career choice and not just a dream or a fantasy. And so that's when it began in terms of an editorial career, because when I started in the business section. I was working under Derek Dingle. And so the way the original Milestone offices were set up, it was like this big loft that was separated into 3 sections, and one of them was editorial and production. One of them, well, actually, it was business and production. One was business and editorial, and one was the color studio. And so from my desk, I was able to see production. And so production deals with the actual physical product, getting everything together. And every Friday, pages would have to be messengered over to DC Comics. And, that kind of stuff is really intense. But when you do it, it's very cathartic. And as a community, you feel a victory. And I watched that one day. I saw that community of my colleagues who were involved in that, I saw their catharsis. I saw their emotional uplifting, and I felt like I was distanced from that. And I felt like even though I appreciated being on the financial side and learning about the mechanics of running a company, what I got into comics for was content. And so that's when I spoke to Derek and I spoke to Dwayne, and I asked to be moved over to editorial, and I was. And so Dwayne McDuffie took me under his wing, and he showed me what editing was, and that's when I realized that was a vocation.
Okay, let me ask you then, when you asked to get into editorial, did they provide any pushback, or did they kind of accept you with open arms, saying, okay, he wants to grow and learn more, let's get it done? Was it an easy task?
It was definitely the latter. The Milestone founders and the Milestone climate was not one of denying someone the path that they wanted to choose, right? That's not good business. It's not mentorship, and it's not a good way for us as a people to treat one another. Mm-hmm. So if someone has a path, unless that path is to self-destruction or something like that, then that's one thing. But if we're talking about a career path, if we're talking about a vocation, then you want to encourage that. So they were very encouraging. It was a little bit of a surprise, but they were very encouraging.
Excellent.
Joe, a lot of our listeners are just straight up fans, and so they might not know like what exactly a comic book editor does. So can you just give us a sense like what's the day-to-day, or what did you learn were the day-to-day practices of editorial in your experience with Milestone?
Right. So there's a number of factors, one of which is ultimately editors are responsible for working with the creators to get books done on a timely basis, because comic books are a monthly business. They're not a hobby, they're a business. If the books don't come out on a regular basis, there are other competitors that are just waiting to occupy that shelf space that you missed, right? So the first thing is you're working with talent to get books on schedule. You're working with them to maintain a level of quality. There should be quality control. In that respect, you're looking for quality of writing, quality of art, typographical errors, things like that. Quality of writing can be a whole other podcast in and of itself. But what's very important is that every fictional universe and set of characters has rules, and those rules need to be protected. Those rules need to be maintained. So you are a caretaker of an intellectual property. In my case, at that time, it was called the Dakota Universe, right? So I was responsible for that. Now, unlike most editors, I was fortunate enough to have an art education, and so I have an art background, and that allows me to speak to artists in their language. And
Great.
I found that to be very helpful in my career. And so that is part of it. Another part of it is actually to be someone to talk to, because something that a lot of us may take for granted is, if we have a 9-to-5 job and we're going out among society, we're outside on a regular basis. The people who make our comic books, they're inside at their table with these solitary existences. So sometimes you need to be a friend, sometimes you need to be a therapist, or sometimes you just need to be someone to talk to.
So how many hats you have under the desk right now?
Yeah, you don't want to know. I gotta keep them all clean. I gotta be ready to pull out anyone at the drop of a hat. But ultimately, the job of an editor is to help creators be the best creator they can be, help the writer be the best writer they can be, help the artist, the letterer, the colorist. If you have an assistant, to nurture them. And everything is in service of the story. The story comes before your ego, right?
I gotta ask though, as an editor, what is the most difficult task? In your experience when you've done editorial, especially there in Milestone, where this is your first venture into the editorial game. What did you find to be maybe the most challenging thing that you had to deal with at the time?
I mean, the most challenging aspect of the job to me, I wouldn't discover until later on. To me, it's the delivery of bad news. Sometimes you have to let talent go. That's a reality. Those are calls.
So that's an editor's job, to let go of the talent.
Well, sometimes you have to do that because for various reasons. That's not a call I ever like to make. That's not a discussion I ever like to have. Sometimes it's hard to navigate the balance between representing a company, looking out for your talent. So you have to find a way to sometimes push back, but push back in a way that is respectful and considerate of your talent.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy, but you do your best. So I think the hardest things are the negotiations in dealing with unpleasant news.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Joe, if we just to put a bow on the whole Milestone piece, can you give us your best sense of what's the status of Milestone in 2019?
Yeah,
right.
I'm waiting.
Well, we're all waiting.
Now, to be fair, I'm not one of the founders. I'm not in the inner circle, although I have great relationships with Reggie Hudlin, Dennis Cowan, and Derek Dingle. I feel confident that the characters are going to come back. My guess, based upon various things I've read, is that it all comes down to contractual negotiations. I mean, we love these characters very much, but, a lot of people either forget that this is a business, or quite frankly, they think they understand the business and they don't.
Yeah.
They think they know who to blame. They think blame is what's needed. And it's like, you know what?
No.
Sometimes it's just business.
It is. These are intellectual properties, man.
Yeah. And when you're in business, you will understand that. You will understand that a lot of the things that we have come to appreciate actually took a lot of time behind the scenes. So I'm confident that we will see those characters again in print. When that will happen, I don't know. My real advice to people is don't wait for it. Create your own stories. If there is a hole that is not being filled for you and you have some creative skills, fill it yourself. Explore what else is out there in comic books. There are a lot of creators of color creating independent comic books. One of them, a friend of mine, just passed away recently, Robert Garrett, who created the X-War universe and had books like Ajala and Galto. You can go to a number of Black comic book conventions throughout the United States. There's even a comic book convention, the Lagos Convention in Nigeria, right?
Really? Have you gone to that one?
Yeah. There's a comic book convention in Nigeria. Yeah.
And you went to that one, though?
I did not go to that one, but a book I worked on won an award at that one.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Congrats
Wow.
on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Noble from the Lion Forge Catalyst Prime line, which I'm sure we'll get to
Yo, we're
Yes,
gonna
we
get
in a
into
will.
bit.
that.
Oh, yes, we
But
will.
yeah, so the thing is, you know, don't wait for these characters to come back and stress yourself out. Find ways to enrich yourself. And then, one day you'll go to your computer and you'll see a press release and it'll tell you when they're coming back, and that'll be cool.
I hope so, because I've been waiting for quite a long time. I've met a couple of creators that were involved in the Den Room in Return a couple of years ago, and they showed
Mm-hmm.
me some pictures, off the record. I don't want to mention their names because of that reason, but
Right,
they showed me
right.
such wonderful work. I'm like, oh my God. Listen, when people are clamoring for a diverse universe, DC has one on the palm of their hands, but unfortunately, contractual IP stuff, whatever. I hope to see it though eventually.
Yep.
But now that let's move up. You did the editorial stuff. You worked on Static Shock. 26th anniversary this year, folks. 26
That's
years
right.
of Static Shock. So don't
That's
sleep
right.
on that. Amazing
right.
character. And actually, folks, just a little bit of trivia because I know one day Joseph P. Illidge is going to be part of a trivia question. So Joseph's first work in Milestone was hardware number 16, which is when they introduced the 2.0. Correct?
Wow. I think as an assistant editor, that may be the first book I worked on, either as an assistant
Yeah, so you
editor
worked on, yes.
or yeah, I actually worked on this weird backup feature that I think dealt with the evolution of hardware's armor, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So great work with that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great. That was a great time. There were just also a lot of cultural things going on then. I mean, 1993 was the year that Milestone launched, but it was also the year that Wu-Tang Clan launched.
Yeah,
Wow.
I graduated high school that year.
Yeah.
I bought that Wu-Tang album off of Tower Records in New
Yeah.
York City, on
Yeah.
tape. I still have it downstairs. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
You say you from Brooklyn? I'm from Greenpoint, Brooklyn, right next
Okay.
to Bushwick and Greenpoint. Where you from?
East Flatbush.
East Flatbush.
And
right?
I live in Flatbush right now, so I'm a few train stops from Brooklyn College, and I am equidistant between two Brooklyn comic book stores, Bulletproof Comics and Anyone Comics.
That's awesome. When I lived in Brooklyn, a lot of the shops just went away. So
Yeah.
I was very limited to the shops. I had to go to the city, Midtown, the chains. But I like the small shops. So hopefully, when I get to visit Brooklyn again, when I visit Mama Duke's, I'm gonna check out those shops.
You're
Now
right.
I want to get into the things that happened after Milestone, the next step, because you broke a barrier here, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're talking about entering the Batman editorial
Yes.
department, being
You were the first
person
black
of color as an editor of Batman. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. So the
How did
story
you
behind
achieve that gig, man? Because that's
Hey,
Batman.
Listen, I mean, part of it is your work ethic, part of it is your personality, and a hell of a lot of it is luck. Quite frankly, luck and some help from the creator. So what happened was, at the time, the Green Lantern office needed an assistant editor, and my friend Alisan Morales was an editor at DC Comics, and she recommended me, and DC only wanted a temp, so they hired me through an agency.
Okay.
So as a temp, I was actually working on Green Lantern books, Tangent books. I was working on
Tangent.
this great...
Oh, he
Yeah.
said Tangent.
I was working on this great comic book called Chase.
Oh, yes, sir.
By Dan Curtis Johnson, J.H. Williams III, Mick Gray, and I think Lee Lowridge. And because I was a temp, I didn't get credited. I couldn't get credited in the books. So I was there for a few months, and then I ended up working at Simon & Schuster in their Star Trek novel division, dealing with their novels and books and stuff. And that was all for 7 weeks. And what happened was I had this 10-page Oracle story, because Oracle is one of my favorite characters in comics, that I wanted to pitch to Batman Chronicles. So I went to visit DC Comics, and I went to see Jordan Gorfinkel, and because he worked in the Batman department, and I said, "Hey, Gorf, I got this Oracle story I want you to look at. I think it would be really cool." And he said, "Okay, that's cool, but listen, I want to talk to you about something else." He said, "Scott Peterson, who's like one of our top editors, is leaving, and we have a vacancy in the editorial department, and we'd like to know if you'd like to join.
Wow.
Okay.
So I can't imagine what my face looked like at that moment. But I'm sure any like machismo or anything that I had just totally vaporized. And I went back to one of my bosses at Simon & Schuster, a woman named Margaret Clark, who also was an editor at DC Comics once upon a time.
Okay.
DC and maybe even Marvel. And I said to her, hey, listen, I really appreciate the opportunity you gave me here, but Denny O'Neil and his crew are offering me an editorial position with Batman, and I don't know what I should do. And she said, are you crazy? You should run over there and take that job.
Right? You should have said yes right then and there. Why did you come back?
So, well, you know what it is, man? It's like, yeah, it's more money. Yeah, it's more like, popularity. But it's like, I don't just like to turn my back on people that did me a solid.
I say that jokingly, but that's
yeah.
honorable person, bro. That's
in business, you gotta be that way.
Don't burn any bridge ever.
Exactly. Now later on, I would burn a ton of them and have to rebuild them stitch by stitch, but that was later. So anyway, so I took the job, and they were starting this 1-year experiment called No Man's Land, which would be like 1 year, one big 52-part weekly Batman super saga, and it was insanity. So that was like me jumping into Gotham when they were doing this big experiment, and Batman No Man's
of a huge event book.
Yeah, basically due to a contagion and due to an earthquake, the United States government considered Gotham City a hazard zone to the rest of the United States. So they blew the bridges. Gotham City descended into a feudal society. There was no food going in and out. There was no electricity. And it basically showed what happens when a society descends into feudalism. It showed how Batman and Gotham City are interconnected, because since Gotham was broken, Batman's spirit was broken.
Yep.
And it showed what it took for him to come back. It showed what it takes to rebuild an urban mythology. And it showed the consequences of turning your back on your people and getting them to embrace you again and earning back their trust. So it was a very human story that was a big experiment that DC wasn't sure they wanted to do, but Denny O'Neil convinced them to do it. And it turned out to be the biggest windfall of that year. That story would later on inform things like The Dark Knight Rises, Gotham Season 5, Arrow Season 2. There are a lot of things that came out of No Man's Land. Cassandra Cain, who's going to be appearing in the 2020 Birds of Prey film. No Man's Land was basically...
Did a spoiler come out of there too?
Out of which one?
Out of No Man's Land? Or something happened to her within the spoiler story?
Well, actually, Stephanie Brown was not involved in No Man's Land. So I guess she wasn't on the island, when it happened, but the spoiler was not there. Lex Luthor was there, though. He had a very significant role in Act 3 of No Man's Land. But so that's when I came into the Batman editorial group. And as an associate editor, I also got to work on some of my own books. So one of the books that I edited was Birds of Prey, which I inherited from Jordan Gorfinkel. And that would turn out to be one of my favorite books. And I would end up really developing an affection for Barbara Gordon as Oracle and for Dinah Lance, the Black Canary.
Yep.
And that was actually my first experience, which necessitated me to then start defending the representation of women in comics. As a Black person, I was always looking out for, representing Black imagery, Black characterization, and those of people of color as well. But with Birds of Prey, I had to look after how women were represented. I had to look after how disabled characters were represented. Batgirl as Oracle, Barbara Gordon was a wheelchair user. So I had to look after that. And in doing that, your responsibility increases as a caretaker. But again, I really developed a love and affection for those characters. And to this day, working on Birds of Prey is definitely one of my editorial highlights.
Joe, you talk about understanding a universe and like understanding the rules. Can you tell us what it was like when you first like read the book on Batman and like when you were preparing to step into the editorial role for the Batman universe? What was the preparation process like?
Okay, so I can tell you that I wasn't properly prepared for it. And an example of that is 2 weeks into the job, I got some pages in from an issue of Catwoman. There was a 3-part storyline in which the Joker was crossing over into Catwoman. And these pages come in from the colorist, and the Joker has blue lips. Now, I know that the Joker has red lips, but I was like, well, listen, I just got here. This colorist has been on this comic book, I think, since the first issue. So if the Joker has blue lips, there must be a reason for it. I'm just going to pass these through, right?
Oh, okay.
I think a few days later, the assistant art director sent this email to the entire Batman group asking who was responsible for this. Everyone knows Joker has red lips. Now we're going to have to pay extra money to pull this back because we got it proved. You know, like, who is responsible for this? And Jordan Gorfinkel, who I mentioned earlier, he took a bullet for me, and he said it was his fault.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hope he didn't lose his job over it.
No, he didn't lose his job at all, but that said something about his character. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But so that was the day when I learned that Batman was not a character, that Batman was an intellectual property. And that intellectual properties have rules that are inflexible. And one of them is that the Joker's skin is white, his hair is green, his suit is purple, and his lips are red, right? So it was after that that I read the Batman Universe Bible and became truly aware of the inner workings of the Gotham City intellectual property of characters, came to understand that Batman is a character that's beloved by multiple generations. So there are certain things you still can't do in a Batman comic. Right?
So things hold a gun and shoot someone.
Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other story too. But yes, guns are anathema to Batman. So if you ever see Batman pick up a gun and that gun has bullets in it and he points it at a living being, whoever wrote that is not writing Batman.
Wow.
Straight up. Because that thing murdered his parents. That thing basically destroyed his life and gave birth to something else. And while he is a very self-aware person, and while he understands the necessity of Batman, the gun is an evil thing for lesser people to do a very profound thing with an absence of intimacy. Yeah? To point this mechanical thing at somebody and just take away their future from a distance. That is probably the worst crime in Bruce Wayne's mind. Yeah? So these are the things you have to know when you're dealing with these characters. And if you see that rule broken, there better be a damn good reason for it, like some Batman who laughs, or a thing like is a Batman from a parallel universe who went down a different path.
Right.
That Arkham Knight is totally
exactly.
insane.
Arkham,
right?
But main continuity Batman, like, that's not his thing. You know what I mean? The only time I ever read it and it made sense to me was in Batman Black and White #1. Warren Ellis wrote an origin story in which Bruce Wayne used guns and shot corpses so that when he would see a dead body, he would know what kind of gun and what kind of bullet this person was shot with. So it was detective work. But that's the only time I ever saw like Batman like pull a trigger on a gun, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But not on a living human being. No way.
So, and before we even skip away from DC, you also did the Batgirl editorial, and you did some work on Batman Beyond that also went into this cartoon series, correct?
That's right. I was the editor of the Batman Beyond series, and I would liaise with WB Animation. I would talk to Sean McLaughlin over there, who was one of the producers. Hillary J. Bader, who was the main writer, she worked on the animated series. So the job was to make the comic book dovetail more with the continuity of the animated series. And I was one of the editors on the Batgirl series, which was the ongoing series with Cassandra Cain, the Asian Batgirl who was introduced during No Man's Land. So working with Scott Peterson, Kelly Puckett, the amazingly talented one and only Damian Scott, Robert Campanella, Jason Wright. So that was a really great comic book to work on. And it's one of those things where you don't realize at the time how much of an impact your work is going to make. But I remember, I think it was in 2017, I was at a convention, I was part of a panel, and I mentioned Cassandra Cain and how I thought she's my Batgirl. Barbara Gordon is my Oracle, and Cassandra Cain is my Batgirl, right?
You read my mind.
Yeah. And after the panel was over, this young man walked up to me, and he drew a picture of Cassandra Cain in her Batgirl outfit, and he gave it to me. And he said, Batgirl was the first character I ever fell in love with. So he said, I just wanted to say thanks, and this is for you.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's the thing. You do these things, and they have these ripple effects on people, on media years later. And so that's why this job is, it's really a vocation, and it's really a responsibility for all of the headaches that come with it. To be able to do it is really a privilege.
All right, so you did your 2-year stint as a DC editor, right? And touching upon...
Yeah, I was there for 3 years. I started in 98 and I broke out in 2000. So I was there for those 3 years, yeah.
And then you did, you actually went from there to do something like an independent comic to bring about animal cruelty awareness. And that was like a short stint there.
Yeah,
right?
That was weird. So when I left comics, when I left DC Comics, I actually worked in book production for a while, and I learned about how books are made, which is very crucial to the business because, we buy things with our eyes the same way we eat with our eyes. And if you see a book and it doesn't look good, it doesn't look like it's something of quality, you're never going to buy it and discover the beauty inside. So I learned about book production, and what you're talking about was a graphic novel called Air Force, which was for a company called Bodog, an entertainment company that had 3 different divisions. I think one was wrestling, one was mixed martial arts, and I forget what the third, gambling, right? And the owner of the company wanted to do this graphic novel, which basically imagined himself as a James Bond figure in charge of this secret missions force. So basically it was like these gamblers and these wrestlers and these mixed martial artists were actually on their off time, something akin to G.I. Joe meets Mission Impossible. So I was actually brought on by a person who would be my co-writer, Sean Martinborough, Andrew Dalhouse, Marshall Dillon, and I all worked on this, and the proceeds of the book actually went towards a charity that dealt with the preservation of the lives of bears, because bear bile is actually a valuable commodity in some nations overseas. It's kind of like a luxury. It's like the equivalent to caviar. Yeah, you hear what I'm saying?
Caviar, bear bile?
Yeah, bear bile.
It's like a delicacy somewhere.
So bears were being
my mind.
mutilated for bear bile. So, so this was actually for charity purposes, which I felt really good about. I was like, okay, if you can help bring something into the world that has some kind of humanitarian effort behind it, that's pretty cool. So that was a really offbeat project that I did. And I actually did that while I was working at a independent publisher called Archaea.
Yeah, you were doing. Listen, you were busy because when you left DC, you did that. Animal cruelty. You were doing Archaea, but then you also created Verge Entertainment.
Right, Verge Entertainment is a company I co-founded with Sean Martinborough and Milo Stone, and we developed a library of intellectual properties for various media. So that's a library that we have going while we continue to pursue our individual careers. something which may not be in your bio, there may be one or two things you don't know is that while I worked in book publishing, I actually edited a book called How to Draw Hip Hop, which was co-written and illustrated by Damian Scott.
Wow.
And
No way.
I think there's been like 15 printings. It has
What?
been printed in multiple languages, German, Japanese,
Get out.
possibly French. So, yeah, I always try to keep my relationships with comic book creators going because sometimes a crazy project like that is going to pop up and you need to know who to dial on your bat phone, right?
I love the Ed Piskor hip hop family tree.
Oh yeah,
so that's an amazing
Is
book.
that along
Yeah.
those lines? Because if it is, I need it right now.
Yeah, well,
I
you know
love
what?
that.
Honestly, yeah, you after the interview, you Google how to draw hip hop, Damian Scott.
I'm doing it right
and
now.
you
I'm doing it
check
right
out.
now.
And I
I'm
tell
adding
you,
it to my Amazon cart right now.
there is no other art instruction book like that in the history of civilization as we know it.
All
Wow.
right. So now I gotta know. So what inspired that? I mean, were y'all all hip hop fans that said we need this right now?
Well, I mean, again, don't forget, like, so I'm an 80s kid. So I grew up on, Run DMC, Kumo D, Eric B. and Rakim,
That was my views right there.
like Queen Latifah, all those people.
BDP, all them dudes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And don't forget, like I said, when I was in the 4th and 5th grade, you're talking about the 70s. So you're talking about Grandmaster Flash, Rapper's Delight. When I was in Milestone in the 90s, we talked about Wu-Tang Clan. We talked about, Bad Boy Records. One time we had Vernon Reed from Living Color visit the offices.
Wow.
We had Quincy Jones and David Saltzman visit the offices.
Quincy?
Yeah, I met Quincy. I mean, oh my God. So,
Dude.
music and hip hop have kind of always followed me through my life. So what happened was the publisher came to me and he said, "Hey, we'd like to do a hip hop art instruction book." And you hear that and you're like, that's crazy. But I'm like, okay, because I love challenges. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do that, it has to be legit, right? You can't have any fakers, right? So I was like, well, the most legit person I know is Damian Scott. Because Damian Scott, born and raised in Brooklyn, amazing graffiti artist. I mean, hip hop is like in his veins.
Right.
He believes it.
Yeah. So I called him, and actually a friend of mine, Chris X, a well-known music journalist. So brought them together, and we did this book, and it continues to live on, and it's pretty awesome. So it's just a thing where, like, okay, if you're gonna do it, like, do it legit. Like, I felt like if it couldn't be legit, I would have declined, because I would rather not put out something that's counterfeit. Like, don't put out something counterfeit. Like, if you're gonna put it out legitimate or decline.
Yeah.
So that's how that worked. So
Gotcha.
a little bit of secret history.
All right, so I wanna understand something here because after your Archaea stint, you finished that in about 2009, and you kind of went away from the editorial scene. It looks like for a while, where you got into manufacturing and printing, and although you were away, you still had Verge, and then you started contributing to CBR.
That's right. That's right.
What happened? Why did you step away from the editorial side and get into the manufacturing and printing side of it?
I honestly stepped away because comics kind of broke my heart. I was angry at comics, and some of that anger was the way I had been treated at the end tail of my time at DC Comics. But honestly, some of that was my own immaturity that I had internalized, and that I did not have, I did not have the scope to deal with at the time. And what happened was Dwayne McDuffie passed away. My apologies if you hear my cell phone picking the perfect time to ring as I'm having this interview, and I should have turned it off. But so Dwayne passed away, and after mourning him, which was really tough,
I can't imagine.
I came to the conclusion that my purpose was to continue his work. And so if his work was to be continued, then I would have to become a different kind of a person to continue his work because the person that I was a bit angrier and a bit more self-righteous and less equipped to continue his work. So I had to do some of my own soul searching, which is an ongoing process in life. And so when I came back into the comic scene, I was doing a lot of interviews and things like that. And Jonah Weiland, who at the time owned Comic Book Resources, reached out to me and asked me if I would do a Black History Month column.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Awesome. All
So
right.
basically like a weekly column for Black History Month. And I did a series of interviews of Black creators in comics. And the column was called The Color Barrier, right?
Okay.
And so after Black History Month was over, he said, "You know what? I like this. Let's do some more. Let's just keep it going for another month." We did it for March, and he said, "Keep going," and we did it for April. And then he said, "You know what? There's something happening here, and we shouldn't just cut it off like this. Why don't we make this a weekly thing?"
Okay.
And I was like, "Okay." So then I changed the name of it to The Mission. And what the column was really about was it was about diversity across different spectrums of comics. So we tend to think about it from the perspective of characters and the people behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily realize how those things are connected. We don't necessarily realize how business works. So this was really a discussion about diversity in comics from a socio-cultural perspective, from an economic perspective, and from a business perspective, right? So when you're talking about Luke Cage, you're not just talking about the superhero, you're talking about the Attica riots of 1971. You're talking about the fact that Luke Cage was created at a time when our leaders were getting murdered by bullets.
Yeah.
Indiscriminately murdered by bullets. So the fantasy projection of a Black superhero would not be to have a power ring, would not be to shoot beams out of his eyes. It would be to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
So that what happened to Malcolm and what happened to Martin
Luther,
could not happen to Luke Cage, right? So these are the things that we discuss. And when we discuss Nighthawk getting canceled, you're not just talking about a comic book with a Black male superhero fighting against a prejudicial authoritarian police regime getting canceled. You're talking about Nighthawk coming out at the same time as Civil War II and DC Rebirth and basically getting choked to death, right, by two big events. So there's no way that a comic like Nighthawk could survive being choked by those two events. So the column was really about making these correlations about diversity in comics to society and to business. And I would end up doing that. I think those columns combined, I think I ended up doing for a good 2-year stretch.
2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So you go ahead, James.
Yeah, no, I just want. I mean, because we want to make sure that this is like as watchable as possible for your life. And I know your time is short, but I want to.
Listen, man, consider it. Let's keep going until you want to end it.
Yeah, and listen, I want to know all I can about Mr. Illidge because this man is
he's done it all.
Folks, he's done so much. You guys just don't understand what he's done in the industry.
Thank you. You guys are quite kind. Thank you very much.
We're going to keep going
it's just
here.
The facts, yo.
Yeah,
right,
it is. So you did your CBR stuff, you did your manufacturing. And then I remember this one-off episode of this one cartoon, Solar Man. And all of a sudden, off of that one episode, Scout Comics wanted to reintroduce the character, and here comes Joe.
Right, yeah. So that was interesting. What happened was, Solar Man was a character. He was created in the 90s. And the couple, so David Oliphant and his wife, Deborah, created Solar Man. He was a Caucasian blonde superhero that kind of looked a bit like Sunboy from the Legion of Superheroes in the 70s.
He says, you know who he reminded me of? He reminded me of the villain in that Superman movie, Peace on Earth.
Oh yeah, Nuclear Man.
Yeah, man. That's what he
Yeah, so
reminded
he
me
kind of aesthetically emulated those characters. So he appeared in a Marvel comic for 3 issues. He fought Doctor Doom. He appeared in the cartoon pilot that you referred to, and then the character disappeared. So 25 years later, what happened was the couple gave the publishing rights to Scout Comics. The head of Scout Comics is a friend of mine, Brendan Deneen. They said they wanted to make the character black because in this time it was more important to have a black male teenage superhero. Brendan is white, and in his infinite wisdom said to me, "Hey, look, dude, I'd like you to come on board because you can bring a perspective that I can't bring."
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay.
That.
So I was like, okay, let's take a whack at it. And so we ended up doing 3 issues, and I served as co-writer and editor. I brought on the creative team, N. Stephen Harris, Andrew Dalhouse, and Marshall Dillon. So it was an almost totally black creative team. Both N. Stephen Harris and I live in Brooklyn. Solar Man lived in East New York, which was something that we wanted to do because
I lived in ENY on Logan for a minute.
Exactly. You always see these superheroes in these glamorous neighborhoods, but why not an unglamorous neighborhood, which is actually going through gentrification? So East New York is this weird kind of
animal. East New York is getting gentrified now.
Yeah,
because I know my side. Forget about it. That got gentrified up the ass. And Williamsburg, and then Bushwick. Somebody made me laugh. They said, Bushwick is gentrified and crazy when you can see a female walking piss drunk at 3 a.m. in the morning, and she's actually safe.
Well, yep, that is something. That is something, and it's a shame that there's ever a time when we have to feel unsafe. But yes,
it was New York. You know how it was in the 90s.
No doubt, dude. And so Bushwick is definitely different. So we had the character in East New York. We did 3 issues. We had a lot of fun. There's always, you always try to do the best that you can, and we did. And so so that was a interesting project to work on, and had a lot of fun. And just creating a new black superhero was a lot of fun.
Right.
See, and you were doing that, and then in between that, because at Scout Comics, you were there between 2015 and 2017. However, in 2016, you got your foot in the door with Lion Forge.
Right. So Lion Forge was a company, I believe they started in 2011. I met the founders, David Stewart II and Carl Reed. I met them at New York Comic Con when they premiered, and I saw this table of all black creators.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I hadn't seen something like that since Milestone. And I was like, okay, I've got to see who these people are. So I met the creators. I met them. We stayed in touch through the years. They asked me to come on board to do some freelance editing. So I was freelance editing for them while I had a regular job at Sterling Publishing, while I was writing columns for Comic Book Resources, while I was on the tail end of Solar Man. So I was busy, to say the least. And
what were the first IPs you worked on at Lion Forge?
Okay, so that's interesting. The first one, I think I actually worked on something based off of a wrestler. I think his name was Chavo Guerrero.
Chavo Guerrero?
Chavo Guerrero, yeah.
Chavo
it was a comic book based off of him. And
Chavo? That's Eddie Guerrero's nephew, may he rest in peace. He was an awesome Mexican wrestler.
So that was the first thing I worked on over there. The big thing I worked on was the Catalyst Prime superhero universe and how that came about. Yeah, I was basically the editorial shepherd and director of that line. And what happened was they tried to do Catalyst Prime twice, and for a number of reasons it didn't work out. And so they asked me to freelance edit some of the books, and I said it would work better if I was full-time. I said, for me to give the time that's needed to do this right, it would be better for this to be my only job. So we negotiated that, and I left my job at Sterling Publishing, and I worked for Lion Forge full time. And when I first got there, I said, well, let me see your Bible. Because when I worked at Milestone in the 90s, there was a Dakota Universe Bible that was 100 pages. And when I worked in the Batman editorial group, there was a Batman Universe Bible that was about
1,000 pages.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I said, let me see your Bible. And it was 4 pages long. And I was like, no, the Bible. And they said, this is it. And I said, okay.
He gave you the Jehovah's Witness Atalaya, which is like 4 pages, right? And you asked
Yeah, I was like,
Bible.
no.
Give me the
So
King James version right now.
Yeah, I was like, no, this is what we're going to have to do, right? And so the first thing I did was I said, okay, let's look at what we have here. How do we build from this? And I had to get together the team of writers. And so after the San Diego Comic-Con of 2016, a group of writers and I got together. You know, they were hired by Lion Forge confidentially. It was a 2-day retreat in California, and we basically fleshed out the Catalyst Prime universe.
Wow.
And I spent the next 2 weeks taking all the notes from that meeting, and at the end we had a 63-page Bible.
Nice.
Wow.
Which was, you know, which would be the nucleus of Catalyst Prime. And so after getting that together, it was time to recruit the artists, the pencilers and inkers, the letterers and the colorists, and we did that. And we basically worked on this.
How difficult is that process?
Yeah.
Very, very. It's very difficult because every aspect of comics is art. You know, coloring is an art form. Lettering is an art form. You want to pick the right people for the right book.
You don't want Posner over that.
Yeah,
he was a great colorist.
Yeah. Well, God rest Justin's soul. I mean, Justin did work on some of the most important Marvel comics in the last 15 years.
Yes,
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
So you've got to pick the right people for each book. You've got to make sure that no 2 books look the same or feel the same. Every book has to have its own identity, and they still have to work within a cohesive superhero science fiction universe and the rules that govern that universe.
Right.
Okay.
And we were dealing with one large narrative, which is 5 astronauts go into space to prevent an asteroid from destroying the world, and supposedly only 1 comes back.
Okay. When
in fact 3 came back, and something that readers of Catalyst Prime today are learning, that actually a 4th one came back.
Oh.
And we had that planned from way back.
Okay.
That's the purpose of having a Bible.
Exactly. We had that planned from way back. And so it was basically at the time, the most daunting and exciting job I ever had, because it was basically me sitting in the chair that was vacated by Dwayne and basically being the editorial shepherd of a superhero universe that had people of color, that had people of different sexual lifestyles, that had disabled characters. And for me, emotionally, what it was the closing of a circle, because Milestone gave me my career in comics, or the start of my career, and the absence of Milestone left a void in American comics.
Sure it did.
And so Catalyst Prime gave comics back a universe of heroes for people to look at and say, there's me, there's my friend, there's my sister.
I want to ask you something. I want to throw back for a minute, just on the Milestone, because when I was growing up in the 90s, obviously, you know, I'm a teen, I'm working, and I'm buying books, and I'm buying Milestone, you know, some DC, some Marvel, ton of Image, you know, I love indie. I love indie. But I would hate that I had friends that didn't collect Milestone, and they're looking at me and say, "Why are you collecting black comics?" I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean black comics? These are people that look like us, because it's more than black people. There's Latinos, you had Asians, you had transgender, you had so many different things that weren't in comics then, that people were just too close-minded to comprehend."
That's right. Milestone broke a lot of ground in terms of representation. Absolutely 100% right.
And this is why that I beg for this to come back almost. I understand you saying, hey, you know, create your universe if what you want is not there. Understood. Is that DC? I love these characters so much, and I hate to see them being held hostage.
On the
At
shelf.
least in my as a fan, you're gonna see them on the shelf for being held hostage. Although, like you say, I know there's IP stuff going on and families.
Exactly.
But it's just so sad, man. And in a time when we're clamoring for this diverse universe of characters, and we have one that's already been laid out for us. If it only could get that chance to shine once again. I'm very passionate about Milestone, man.
No,
so
I
what
mean,
Dwayne did and everybody, it was just amazing.
So say we all. But the thing is, again, you know, if you spend your life waiting for something, that's time that you could spend creating something. So, you know, creating the Catalyst Prime universe for the people who were and are still waiting for Milestone was very important. And so,
and also, Catalyst Prime did some things that Milestone didn't do. Like, I mean, there are certain characters. They're like superb, as you mentioned, representing different types of people. And I'm just curious. I'm really curious, Joe, about Noble, because to me, Noble really stands out as a really distinct hero, and for my money, one of the only books that really took a serious look at like black loving relationships.
Yes, absolutely right. I'm glad you said that. So Noble was very important. First of all, Noble, you know, was created by David Stewart II, you know, the co-owner of Lion Forge. And so that was a very important character to him. And so I understood that we had to treat this character with special care because he was basically like the Superman of Catalyst Prime.
Right.
And so in thinking about that, you know, I said, okay, well, the most qualified writer to do this is Brandon Thomas, because Brandon Thomas did amazing work. He wrote an issue of Robin. He wrote an issue in a Fantastic Four digest with Black Panther. He wrote Voltron. He wrote Miranda Mercury. Like,
wow,
he was this amazing writer that was denied opportunities by the system. And I said, and so he and I were friends. And he actually inspired me to write because he wrote a column way back in the day. I don't remember the name of it. So Brandon, if you're watching it, please forgive me. But Brandon actually inspired me to write columns. So there would have been no Color Barrier or Mission without Brandon Thomas.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah. So I called Brandon and I said, you know what? Write this comic. And is this a mature channel? Can we cuss on this?
Yeah, he's already been cussed.
Okay. So basically, good. So what I said was, you know, I got Brandon and I got Roger Robinson and I said, I want you to kick the shit out of Superman.
Absolutely.
I said, I want you to show the industry that you should be writing any top level character they have.
Any A-level.
Right? And I said, your target, you target the Ultimates by Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. You target Superman. That's what you do. You don't swing low. You don't swing middle. You swing high. Right?
Agreed.
And we did that with Noble, with the entire team. It was Brandon, Roger, Saida Temofonte, the letterer, Juan Fernandez, the main colorist. We had so many other people come on board. Jamal Eigel, Will Rosado. But going to really what you said, James, about Black love. So Astrid Allen Powell, Noble's wife, was really the brainchild in the true nature of Astrid. A lot of that really came from Brandon, making a Black woman who was just as formidable, if not more formidable than her superhero husband in a number of ways, because she was a former assassin, giving them a son. And basically Noble was the story not about breaking a Black family apart, which is basically the narrative that America wants to superimpose
yeah.
on Black people, but it was about the reunion of a Black
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
Basically, that not even a cosmic event, not even multinational corporations, not even tens of thousands of miles could prevent a Black man and a Black woman and their kid from getting back together. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's heroism, and those are the stories that we need to see, right? When we've got stuff on Netflix, like, you know, I think it's called When They See Us, you know, the Ava DuVernay,
what a great movie that
film
stirs up
on
emotions.
the Central Park 5. When these stories are out there, and for us to watch these stories are triggering, right? We need stories that show strong families of color, that show people of exceptional character, and so Noble was that book. Noble was, it was the book that we needed. It's still the book that we need. And so that one is definitely very special. You know, no parent is supposed to say, you know, I like this child more than this child. But Noble had its own qualities. And I feel equally that way about Summit. You know, a Jewish lesbian female astronaut lead character, right? I feel that much so way about Superb. When I talk to Ray Anthony Height, you know, I call them my babies. I say, oh, I miss my babies, right? Because we all work together to breathe such life into these characters that when people say they like them, when they call them by their names, you know, this is a connection that we're making in humanity. Stories are so that we can talk to one another. You know, so that's what these things are. That's what these mythologies are. They're conversations that we're having with each other and with the world. And what we're telling the world is, we will not let you kill us. We will not let you diminish us. That no matter what you do, we're going to find our way. We're going to find our way in this world, and we're going to help you even when you try to kill us. We're going to help you even when you disrespect us.
Don't we do that already?
Yeah, that's real life. That's real life.
We do it, but there are days when we don't want to. But
I run into those days all the time. But I just look up and look at the sun, and I said, you know, God, give me the strength, and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
That's it. So so Catalyst Prime represented a world of heroes that look like us and stories to inspire.
Well, thank you again for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Can I do one more Lion Forge question?
It was a team effort. You know, everyone involved, from the creators to the company. It wasn't just me, but I was happy to have my role in that, and I was honored. And yes, what's your question?
So I mean, you know that there was a recent merger between Lion Forge and Oni Press. So your babies are being housed in a different entity now.
Right.
And I don't want you necessarily to comment about, because obviously the big social media storm. There are a lot of tea leaves to be read in terms of the creative staff and what's going to happen. What's the future of Lion Forge? Can you just what can you share with us about your best sense of the value of that merger from a business sense, and whether or not you think it's a good thing for something you put your own sort of sweat equity into? Like, do you think that's a good thing for the future, not just of Catalyst Prime, but of Lion Forge writ large?
Right. Whether it was the right thing, I think we'll need a few years to know that. I think we need to see what happens to determine if it was the right thing. I can tell you that I feel nothing but compassion for my ex-colleagues who lost their jobs.
Yeah, a lot of them did, unfortunately.
A lot of people lost their jobs at Lion Forge. A number of people lost their jobs at Oni. But what I can tell you, as someone whom has gone through something similar and came out the other side, is it's painful today, but their better destinies are ahead of them.
Oh, absolutely.
And those amazing people that were unfortunately let go, they're going to go out there and each one of them is going to change the world in a different way. So those companies lost a lot of jewels.
They lost a lot of jewels, but hopefully, again, these are two, independent companies merging to hopefully bring about something even better for us.
I agree. Like I said, let's give it a few years and let's see what comes of this. In terms of the future of Catalyst Prime, when we all created it, it was so that it would have life beyond us.
Yeah.
So the fact that people are still talking about the books, that just makes me proud. Gail Simone is a chief creative architect now. So my analogy is that I liken myself to Jor-El, and I liken Gail Simone to Martha Kent. And I kind of feel like I sent my kid to another world, and you're taking care of him, and you're feeding him, and you're clothing him, and he's going to grow. So I'm a proud papa.
Yeah, I'm sure Gail will kick ass because she's really awesome, man.
Yeah.
She is.
The 7 days crossover event is going to be coming out soon. I will definitely buy the first issue and see what I think about it. But Catalyst Prime will live on, and I feel confident that the owners of Lion Forge intend to realize those characters in other media so they can inspire people. And that's part of why we do this, right? If that can be accomplished, hell, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. See, and then after Catalyst, you jumped for a very short-term time when DMG took over for Valiant Entertainment. What happened there? Why such a short stint at the time when DMG was getting involved? Or was it DMG's fault?
Absolutely not. It had nothing to do with DMG. The co-owner of DMG, Dan Mintz, and I get along very well. DMG, was nothing but supportive of Valiant's publishing efforts. It's just like I said before, we love comics and sometimes we forget it's a business.
Yeah.
And in business, sometimes things come together and they don't mesh. So, I had a vision, Valiant had a vision, the two visions didn't mesh. That's cool. But my feeling is I love the Valiant universe. Harbinger in particular reminded me that there was still some agency in the superhero genre, so I'm forever grateful to Valiant.
Harbinger is amazing. I love my Bloodshot, but to be honest, my go-to man in Valiant is Eternal Warrior.
Well, Eternal Warrior.
I love EXO too, guys. I love EXO.
EXO.
They're great characters.
Everything's awesome.
But hold on, guys. Let's just be honest. Valiant is, to me, it's taking a turn away from some of the, and I'm not a traditionalist.
Right.
But it seems to me like Valiant is taking a fairly deliberate turn away from some of the core ethos of the books and heroes that we just mentioned.
I think that's due to based on recent hires, but that's just my opinion.
Well, you know what? Listen, as we discussed before, a superhero organism is an intellectual property.
Yep.
These things, they morph and they go through changes, right? And so, I wish everyone there the best. I still buy some Valiant comics. My feeling is, leave a place better than it was when you found it. Mm-hmm. And if I can think about any positive contributions I made to Valiant, it would be in the form of the Livewire series.
An amazing series. It's really one of my favorites. Really one of my favorites.
I want to just say this. Livewire is
Livewire.
The dopest female superhero in
all. And there are a lot. And there are a lot of other. Superhero black girl leads. Like there's Naomi. There's Skyward. There's a lot of competition. But Livewire to me is the most. By the way, I thought Secret Weapons was one of the best books.
Secret Weapons is pretty amazing, and Secret Weapons helped, set the tone and set the groundwork for the Livewire series.
Yeah.
And so, from an editorial perspective, that's a title I shepherded. I feel very proud of that.
Outstanding work.
Yeah, Vita
we have reviewed it very, very well here at Comic Crusaders.
Absolutely. And Vita rocks too because she's doing a phenomenal job. Who decided to hire her, to do the ongoing?
That would be me. What happened was, that would be me.
Awesome.
Vita and I, We knew each other for a few years. We had a lot of conversations. And when it was time to make a Livewire series, we let a few writers pitch for it. And Vita got to the layers of the character, got to the layers of Amanda McKee, and understood that to do a redemption story, first you have to break a person down.
Absolutely.
You have to break them down so that they can build themselves back up, right? And so Vita coming on board, and Robert Myers, who's now the senior editorial director, it was his idea to bring the artistic team from Secret Weapons over to the series. And then I brought in Saida Temofonte, the letterer from Noble, because we had a great working relationship. And we just really all worked to make the best comic. Like, I feel like Livewire is something you could call a number of things. You could call it science fiction. You could call it superhero. You could call it a thriller.
So it's so Matrixy based on her power set.
Yeah.
I love her power set. I love her abilities. I love her personality. Yeah. I mean, everybody. Again, people need to stop sleeping. When you want to see a powerful minority character, who needs fucking a Captain of Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel? Fuck them all.
You've got other characters.
There are other characters.
And Livewire is a great comic. Now Heather Antos, who was a well-known Marvel editor, is now the editor of the series at Valiant. She's doing a great job. Livewire, I buy every month.
Yep, me too.
You were talking about Eternal Warrior, the Incursion miniseries.
I can't wait to get a straight-up, full fucking run of Eternal, because I am tired of waiting. No more 12 issues, whatever.
I hear you.
Please give me an ongoing. Valiant needs to step up and do the ongoing.
Eternal Warrior is a little bit heady for your average comic book.
Yeah,
Eternal great though. Man.
Eternal Warrior's he's a great character. He's a tough nut to crack. And I would say your love of Eternal Warrior is shared by the people of Valiant. So, let's see what the future holds. But it's a great universe. They're coming out with a bunch of great projects. And the fact of the matter is, while our paths are going in different directions, we maintain a great relationship. And that's what it's about. Business, is built on relationships. Yeah. And, we can be mature with one another. We don't always have to throw slime at other people or other organizations.
That's right.
I told you before about blowing up bridges. In my younger days, I blew up a bridge at DC Comics. I took 10 years, rebuilding all those relationships.
Wow.
Because you look, in the final analysis, I'm like, well, if you didn't try to kill my mother, we can get around this.
Right.
Right. It's like, this is not
fuck with my family. We're good.
This is not that big.
Right.
And that's one thing that we have to remember, that this is an industry that is based on relationships and people getting along with one another, more so than many other industries. So that's the deal. So now I'm the editorial director of A Wave Blue World.
I was about to get into that. I was going to ask you. Let's get into the seeds of this, because you actually finished with Valiant Comics. It was between 2018, 2019. So it seems like you finished with them earlier this year. And then, what was it, Lisa Wu, correct?
Yes, Lisa Wu.
She hit me up. She hit me up and says, hey, Al, in Comic Crusaders, I'm hooking up with so-and-so, and we're going to form this new company called A Wave Blue World.
Right.
AWBW. Please give me the story behind the meaning of the name and what the company is setting out to do.
Okay, so A Wave Blue World was founded in 2005 by a married couple, Tyler Chin-Tanner and Wendy Chin-Tanner, and their goal was to create a company where stories by people from different backgrounds can be told, and these are speculative fiction stories that basically have an optimistic underpinning. Basically, you read a lot of fiction, you look at the nation in which we live, and you have a lot of doubts, like how much longer are we going to be here? Are we going to kill each other? We've
how much longer are Puerto Ricans going to be classified as Mexicans when we're in the Caribbean, not Central America?
Here we go.
No, the man's talking truth. These forms of divisiveness they rip humanity apart.
Mhm.
And what A Wave Blue World is about how we're all connected as a community. So the origin of the name is a variation on the Aldous Huxley title Brave New World, and basically the way that water connects everything on the planet, this company is intended to connect all of us as a global community.
Wow.
And that's the meaning of the name of the company, yeah? So
Nice.
This is a company that has the true belief system that I do, that Lisa does, and the opportunity to work on creator-owned comics is very exciting, because when you look at the growth sector of comics now, as much as I love superheroes, and I grew up on superheroes, that's not where the growth is. The growth is with kids, the growth is with middle grade, the growth is with young adult, the growth is with creator-owned. When you look at
Absolutely.
the Umbrella Academy on Netflix,
Yep.
when you look at Polar on Netflix, when you
Yep.
look at Walking Dead and Preacher on AMC, when you look at the larger media, when you look at Netflix purchasing Millar World,
Yep.
Value of creator.
Although we haven't gotten shit yet from Miller World, we keep getting. We're gonna do
Magic
this.
Order is coming.
It's gonna come. It's
Is
gonna
it really
happen,
coming?
man.
I hope
Yes,
so.
these things take time. It's not, drop water television show, but it'll happen. But Amazon's giving us The Boys, right? So
I can't wait for that shit, man.
Yeah.
That was a great series. I don't know, James, if you read The Boys, and if
I
you haven't, Uncle Al will take care of you.
No, I've read it. I read the first 14 issues or so. It has some problems on the misogyny side of things, but
it absolutely 100% does.
Let's see what they do with that. I'm interested to see what they do with it on Amazon. Yeah.
Well, basically, The Boys is a metafictional commentary on the misogynistic nature of the superheroic industry, right? So again, that's a whole other podcast. But
and you're warning, we're gonna come to more, my brother.
You can do just on The Boys. But so, creative visions have never been valued more in the global entertainment market than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
So
working to creator owned, brother.
Yep. So working on creator owned comics is great. I'm developing a new slate of titles that will be premiering next year. I can't give you any details.
Oh, come on, Joe.
Okay,
hold
on.
on.
Put it this way. Check this out. Wait, right here, Joe. It's going to be next year. So that means that by New York Comic Con, we should be able to have some teasers. I'm going to go to New York Comic Con. First, will you be there so I could get even better major teasers?
Yes, I will be at New York Comic Con. The Wave Blue World will be there, full court press. And by New York Comic Con, you will have details on this new lineup.
Well, I hope you have a specific press panel, and I want in right now.
Okay. Let's. If it happens, Lisa will definitely let you know. Lisa is such amazing. A powerhouse.
No, she's amazing. She's killing on social. She follows everywhere, and when it comes to letting people know about this brand new brand, if you will, Yo, she's killing it. So shout out to Miss.
Yeah, and again, the company's been around for 14 years, and so they've built a reputation with creators and a body of work, which is a great platform for the company's evolution. So what we're dealing with now is the evolution of the company. It's really exciting. While I can't mention any specific names of ideas or creators, I would say that just look at my resume, look at what I do, look at what we believe in, look at what A Wave Blue World believes in, look at what Lisa believes in, and myself, the rest of the team. We have Justin Zimmerman, we have Nicola Black, we have Jesse Post. If you look at our collective belief system, and you look at what the company represents, you're going to see some interesting stories.
Joe, why am I so excited right now?
I'm very excited. You
are getting me uber excited. Excuse me when I turn my head, because I have a camera in a certain way and my monitor's in a certain way, so I gotta be like this to everybody. However, Dude, I really love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for letting people know that we exist. First of all, we are here because in a documentary back in the day, you had mentioned something, and I want to know if this is what a Wave Blue World is going for. You mentioned 1/5 of buyers are either Black or Latino. So, are you trying to capture that 1/5 of the market with a Wave Blue World and even more?
I would say more because part of the negative narrative that is thrown out there is that diversity means anti-white, is that inclusion is really excluding certain communities.
Oh.
The fact of the matter is it's all of us, right? And
All
so
of us. White, black, Chino, Latino, que se joda. Todos nosotros, everyone.
And when you're talking black, you're not just talking black. You're talking Jamaican. You're talking Asian.
You're talking Caribbean because
exactly.
There's Puerto Rican, there's black in me.
That's right.
Black, there's Taino, there's Spaniard. I'm a motherfucking
Tell it.
You know what I mean?
This is the truth. This is the truth. And so, the company A Wave Blue World is about connecting us as a global community. And so these stories are basically going to speak to the world's going to be here. We're going to make it. How we're going to make it and how we're going to work with each other or fight each other, that's to be revealed. But that's what these stories are. Stories are our sustenance. It's what we need to figure out our place here. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to get into just two parts of your geekdom, and then we're done. All right, bro.
Okay.
So,
we're good.
So there's two things I really want to know about you. All right, because first of all, I heard you are loving Angel from Boom because you're a big
please, yes.
What is up? Yo, to the naysayers out there, why should they be reading Angel right now?
Listen. First off, it's really well written. Brian Edward Hill is a friend of mine. We go way back.
That's the man right
there. He's a great writer.
And I tell you, that dude is one of the smartest writers in entertainment who happens to write comics. This is a fact.
He's so engaging on social as well.
Yeah, he is.
He's mature, he's level-headed, and he's brilliant. So it's very clear that he loves Angel.
Wait a minute. Are we going to see him in a Wave Blue Worlds one day?
Whoa.
Maybe?
Wow.
Whoa.
To be continued. To be continued. Right. And I'm going to start looking around my room for cameras because I'm wondering if there's some kind of surveillance that Comic Crusaders has going on.
Comic Crusaders is all about this business, man.
We just read everything. We just read everything, man. We're just tuned in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But no, Angel from top to bottom is a great comic. Like when you read a comic and it keeps you moving, and when you finish it and you're like, I want more now, that's what that comic book is.
You can't wait till next month. You will start hitting up the writer. Can I please get the last 3 issues right now?
I want another installment right now. And so as someone who watched the series, season 1 and season 5 are my favorites. I feel like season 5 was actually perfect. I think Angel 1 is a great comic. Yeah, and Boom Studios is a company full of just some really good human beings and just really talented human beings. Yeah. So, we're not competing, this narrative of competition.
Yeah, I hate that.
The greater narrative is a narrative of unity.
Yeah.
And the idea that every company does well at what it does best.
Yeah.
And so Boom excels at what they do the same way that a Wave Blue World as a company has excelled at what they do and will excel further. Every company has their thing that they do well.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, we're not competing. We're operating. We're actually operating on parallel roads. And we're actually a movement,
Listen, at this point in time, Comic Crusaders formed a new organization called the Pop Culture News Network. Let me tell you, I have brought in so many other CEOs of other organizations that do similar work.
That's it.
We're all different. But why not share our resources?
Collaboration is better than competition. Collaboration is better than competition.
A shout out to my people at Critics. They're out of Massachusetts, all right? They're all about TV medium, movie medium. You're aware by the comic medium. Yet we blend so well together because we share the same colors. And they're going to be with us at the first ever Scaricon Podcast Awards, where we're up for our first ever nomination for an award.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm excited. You know, even if we don't win, I don't care. To get nominated, that goes to show how awesome my team is. So shout out to UCPN Comic Crusaders. I love you guys, yo. You guys are awesome. Now,
what's up?
I want to get into your last piece of geekdom here before we finish up, because I've been seeing you, little dimensions here and there, and I love the shit out of this show.
Yep.
Doom Patrol.
Oh my god.
Wait, hold on. No spoilers though. Come on, man. I haven't had a chance to watch it.
All right.
No spoilers.
I'll take care of you, James. No spoilers. I'll take care of you though. But no spoilers. What do you think, brother?
Listen, when I said Doom Patrol is the best superhero show,
wow.
That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
It is a fact.
Best superhero show ever created. Wow. And it speaks so much to the times in which we live, I would call it required viewing.
Yes.
Required viewing for everybody. And listen, much love to Daredevil season 3, which is a work of brilliance. Much love to Punisher seasons 1 and 2, which are work of brilliance. But Doom Patrol.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just,
Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
That's
Doom
a
Patrol
hell of a recommendation.
That's the new bar.
Listen, DC Universe app and their shows have been amazing. I don't know if you got privy to watch the first episode of Swamp Thing, but wow.
I did watch Swamp Thing. It was really good.
Creepy. Yeah. That Bernie Wrightson version of a Swamp Thing we finally get. Mm-hmm. We finally get. You understand me? I mean,
that's the archetype. Bernie Wrightson's Swamp Thing is the archetype. The Titan show, I love the Titan show. And season 2 is going to bring the Wilson family. So you're talking Deathstroke, Ravager, and Jericho.
What do you think about Isaiah Morales?
Isaiah Morales. That dude. That's awesome.
Kid.
That is awesome. Well, first of all, I mean, come on, man. Like, so I'm 49. So, like, his career track parallels my life. To me, Isaiah Morales can do no wrong.
I hear you, brother. I'm only 44. But
you youngin'.
You're hiding your white hairs. I'm showing them all.
No, it's true. I'm hiding it in the sunlight.
James ain't hiding it either.
Yeah. But nah, man. I'm so excited. And the fact that someone of his acting abilities is going to get to play such an archetypal, complex character like Deathstroke, especially now that we've experienced a Christopher Priest Deathstroke, and we see really how many layers there are to Slade Wilson. Yeah, like
I'm happy because I'm happy to see a Latino, get some artistic representation. I know that Slade Wilson is not Latino, whatever, and
people now.
Well, exactly. He is now, motherfucker. You better accept that shit.
Exactly. And
wait. Al, you try to start some shit here, Al.
No, I'm not
trying to start it.
Listen, well, I get it. I know how some people are so adamant about, it got to be true to the nature of the book. But guess what, man? If it's true to the nature of the book, we as readers will have no surprises, and it's gonna suck for us.
Right. Yeah, I read. I remember watching an interview back when I was a teenager. I think it was. I forget who the actor was. I'm forgetting his last name. But Anthony, come on, give me the last name. Old guy, he was in Mission Impossible 3. He wasn't a damn Transformers.
Hopkins, right?
Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins said that when you transfer a story from one medium to another, change is inevitable. If something transfers from one medium to another and you expect it to remain exactly the same, your expectations are wrong.
He said that because of the Hannibal Lecter stuff.
Right.
Yeah, things have to change, but does it maintain the spirit? And what the Titans show has managed to do is maintain the spirit of the Wolfman Perez Titans, but bring them into a modern context.
All right, Joe, I want and James, both of you here. I went to Boston Comic Con 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And not to hate, Jimmy Palmiotti is a great creator. His table was stacked with a line like 100 people, right?
Yep.
How am I talking to Marv Wolfman with no one online?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have amnesia, man.
Like,
The comic book has amnesia.
Yeah, right.
I can answer the question for you in part. So there's two parts of that, and Marv Wolfman, much respect to him. I don't idolize anybody, but if there was a comic creator I was going to idolize, it would be George Perez.
I mean, yeah. Well, me too. Man, calling about White Tiger, baby, model after him.
Yeah. When I was going through puberty, like the New Teen Titans.
His artwork is classic. His artwork there is just absolutely classic.
But here's the two answers to your question, I think. One is that it's the same reason why Stan Lee ended up becoming known to more people than Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko or Bill Everett, is because Stan Lee was an outgoing guy. He was this outgoing social guy. And Jimmy Palmiotti is the mayor of comics. And Jimmy Palmiotti there is actually a part of My Secret Origin that has Jimmy Palmiotti in it, going way back, but we can talk about that another time. But I can tell you that he's a prince.
Jimmy P is the man. You're much respect to him.
So that's one thing. So Marv Wolfman, really nice guy, but he's not as outgoing. He's not out there kissing the babies, right? The second thing is, quite frankly, again, comic books is a business, and as such, there's ageism.
Yeah.
So, how someone looks to some degree determines people going to their table or stuff like that.
Okay. Dude, you're so on the money, because I'm going to show another example. I got to meet Rich Buckler before he passed. The creator of Deathlock. I love that character, by the way. He was very unique and different for the time. But again, I just went up to his table because there was no line. It's like, really? Why? Youth, you young folks, please respect the forefathers of this industry.
Absolutely.
Right.
Please, I mean, it's imperative. I mean, I know you love the new guys because that's what you're reading, and they deserve as much love. But you gotta respect the old school. I mean, it's imperative to respect like a legend like a Marv Wolfman. Like I said, when it was me and Bud wanted to cry because he's my Marvel guy, if you will.
Right.
Okay.
And he's like, regardless whether he's a Marvel guy and these, Marv Wolfman is known more for his DC creations. This dude just wanted to cry. He's like, yo, how is nobody here? This is insane.
Right.
Why is there no respect to you?
That's crazy, man. Marv Wolfman is someone. Yeah. Someone you like, hey, man, do you need a soda? I'll get you a soda so you can have something to drink while we just talk. I would have got him
water. I would have chilled there with him all day, taking care of his ass.
And he's just a really nice guy. Like, I've met him. I've spoken with him. That dude is just a really nice guy. And I'm very happy for him to get to see his co-creations realized in all these different media, right?
And you know who else? Tony Isabella. Another creator that was, gets underappreciated for so many years. And then here comes Black Lightning, the TV show. Now all of a sudden everybody knows who Tony Isabella is.
That's it. So it's important that, as you said, we respect these creators, the ones who laid the foundation. We respect them across the different age demographics because, these people created the mythology that is making billions of dollars for corporations, that is giving us amazing entertainment experiences. Let's engage in reciprocity and gratitude to these people.
All right, so James, I want you to ask one more question to Joe, and then I'm gonna have my final question, which is a two-parter, to see how he answers this one.
Okay. Yeah. So
James, go ahead.
Obviously, Joe, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm curious as to whether or not you're going to have any creator-owned properties within the rubric of your current venture with A Wave Blue World.
I can tell you that within the next 5 years, you should expect to see a number of creator-owned properties from me.
A number.
Woo. A number. And it's possible that none of them will be superheroes.
And that's fine because again, my favorite comic book is Sean G. Murphy's Punk Rock Jesus, and that's not a superhero book.
Yep. So
I love that book.
So there will be a number of creator-owned projects. I hope they'll start coming out next year. And the door is open for any of those to appear within the umbrella of A Wave Blue World. If it's the right thing, what's always a priority for me as an editor is to make sure that there is enough space for creators first, right? The only exception that I made was the free comic book day that kicked off Catalyst Prime.
Yeah.
And the only reason I co-wrote that, and this is true, because, you know, I hired Priest to write it. Yeah. And Priest said, well, I'm not going to write it unless you co-write it with me because you understand the DNA of the universe more than me. And he said, and if people like it, I'll take the credit. And if people don't like it, then you can take the blame.
When you collaborate with Priest, that's fair. You'll take that deal. We'll take that deal. Yes.
That's what you get.
And when the last name like Priest is like, you're fucked, bro.
Exactly. But yeah. So that's an answer to your question.
All right. Awesome. My turn. So with that, all right. So it was a reason. Okay, here we go. So, what do you think is going wrong in the comics industry today, and how can we fix it? Coming from that editorial experience.
Wow, that's a large question. So I'll give you some quick answers. Women are still not respected well enough in this industry. The toxicity that companies are allowing their staff and their creators to endure on social media is unacceptable. And we still have to figure out a way as a trinity of comic book publishers, fans, and retailers to truly maximize the potential of getting these stories out to the larger world. To me, that is the trinity of problems.
Gotcha.
With the comic book industry. And I will widen the commentary on women. Really, the other. There still isn't enough equality for the other. And the other is any community that does not fall into the box of Caucasian heterosexual male with all working limbs.
Yep.
Anything other than that profile is the other, and the other still has yet to achieve equality in comics. Right? How to fix it? How to fix it is things like this, where we have conversations. When it gets hard, try to stick it out. And do the work. Like do the work. Don't get distracted, right? Like, you know, I was working in Batman, and I mean, come on, Batman is this super uber rich white man character in his cave and his toys and all that stuff. But within that, we were able to give you Cassandra Cain. We were able to expand on the representation of characters like Oracle and Black Canary. We were able to flesh out Renee Montoya more. Right. Crispus Allen. So
Crispus, oh my God,
Crispus
man!
Allen,
when he became the Spectre, that was such a great story, right?
Crispus Allen,
wow,
created by Greg Rucka and Sean Martinborough. First appearance, Detective Comics 742. So wherever you go,
you speculated 742, right?
So wherever you go, just continue to do the work.
I love it, brother. James, do you have any other questions or concerns?
I mean, Joseph, I just really want to thank you for your time, and you've been so gracious and spending all the time with us and getting us the insights to your career, and just you know, congratulations to you, good brother, on all of your hard work, all of your success, man, all the things you've achieved. And I can tell you the Comics Crusaders family is excited about everything you're going to do next, bro.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It's been great talking with y'all. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for what you're doing. You're using, you know, this medium and technology to broadcast our stories out to more people. What you do is tough. You know, a lot of people they watch podcasts, they listen to that, and they think like, oh, okay, and now I'm done. And they have no idea of the mechanics and the discipline and the dedication and the logistics that it takes to do what you're doing. So you have my thanks.
Thank you for that. That means a lot, because we definitely do work very hard. We Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes to bring the fans, some of this wonderful content with awesome people like yourself that are in the creative industry, and, giving us some tidbits, especially in your journey in the industry. So thank you again for just taking the time out of your day. And I want you back at a New York Comic Con. I better be in that press panel because
Okay.
I want to know what's popping.
If there's a panel, you will get in. But no matter what, even if there's not a panel, by New York Comic Con, you're gonna know what comes next.
Don't worry, bro. I will harass you guys at your table with a couple of cameras. All right?
We won't be hard to find. We'll be there.
Awesome. And so with that, I'm at Omega with my boy Dr. James Peterson. I keep saying Patterson.
That's because James Patterson's a famous writer, yo. Everybody always mixes
But you know what it is, bro, James? You're gonna be a famous writer soon one day because your book on Amazon is kicking ass about the incarceration. That stuff. I mean, that book is deep and insane. So, folks, check it out. There's definitely
Congratulations. What's the name of the book, James?
Prison Industrial Complex for Beginners. It's a documentary comic book. Yeah.
Oh, damn! How subtle.
Wait, you gotta Google it and look at the cover art. Just Google it and look at the cover art.
You Google the cover. Let me tell you, this is one of the most informative books. Like, listen, as a Latino, I haven't been in much trouble in my life. I probably only got in trouble twice, to be honest. But I've never fallen under the system, unlike other people I've known, unfortunately. Yeah. And James's book is so informational on that you really get a grasp and understand. Like, we gotta do something like now.
Right.
But however, with that, make sure to check out Joseph Illidge all over the social mediums. Make sure to check out a wave new world.
Okay. Remember,
a wave new world. A wave.
Water connects all parts of the planet, and the company connects us as communities.
There you go. See, it's
Think
all
about that. I hope you remember.
I love it. It's all about that connection, which is true. So this is what Comic City is about. This is what they about. This is what James is about. And with that, I'm Omega with Dr. J and JPI. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much, y'all.
Take care, bro.
All right, bye.